Imagine the following scene. A break of 8 million rees appears out of nowhere in the family budget. The wife didn't even suspect that her husband, without consulting her, had contracted an astronomical loan to buy a country house for his own mother. 3 days later, he announces the divorce with a mocking smile. Half of this debt is yours. My face. Did you think it was going to go unpunished? But the reaction of the husband's financial maneuver surprised everyone. It was one morning like any other when Anna Georgievna woke up at 6 at point, as she had been doing for decades since she taught children in elementary school. Even retired, the habit of dawn persisted. He walked in silence to the kitchen, being careful not to wake his son and daughter-in-law, turned on the kettle and sat by the window. That two-bedroom apartment in a quiet neighborhood of Moscow, inherited from his parents, was his greatest asset these days, a real treasure in times of inaccessible real estate. 5 years ago, Victor and Lyudmila had moved there. At first, Anna found the idea wonderful. Life in Moscow was hard for young people, the rents were expensive, and so everyone saved that she could still take care of them. Victor, ambitious and successful in a large company, earned well. Lyudmila, although with a more modest salary at a marketing agency, also contributed. Together they decided to raise money to buy their own property, and Anna proudly the couple's responsibility. As he had his tea, he remembered the day's conversation with his friend Galina, who insisted that she transferred the apartment to her son's name. Think about it, Ania, Galina argued. Today everything is quiet, but who knows what the future reserves? So you guarantee his well-being. Anna reflected. After all, Victor was his only son, a natural heir to those square meters. However, something inside her prevented her from making such a drastic decision. It was then that Victor entered the kitchen, impeccable in his sports group, despite the early time. Good morning, Mother. Always the first to wake up, isn't it? He said, kissing his face before heading to the coffee machine. Habit, my son. There is no way to escape. He remained silent for a moment, turning the cup between his fingers, until his tone suddenly changed, serious and solemn. Mom, do I need to talk to you? Remember, you always dreamed of a country house, a quiet place, with garden, orchard, a balcony for hot days. Anna stared at him, surprised. Of course I remember. When I was little, my parents were renting a little house on the outskirts of Moscow. I miss those tomatoes and apples. But nowadays, Victor, this is a luxury that doesn't fit anyone's pocket. What if I say it is possible? His eyes shone with a strange intensity. I received a promotion. My salary will increase considerably. Lyudmila, and I think it's time to realize your dream. You have done so much for me, now it's my turn to return. Anna felt her heart tighten. After all, he had created a good man. But son, this must cost a fortune. You're saving to your apartment. I thought of everything, interrupted Victor. I will finance, with my new salary. It will not be a problem. I even found the perfect place, a small but solid house in the district of Istria, 600 meters of terrain, all documented, with infrastructure. The tears ran off unliquidated. My God, Victor, I don't even know what to say. He hugged her firmly. On Sunday we will meet. If you like it, we closed the deal. The next day, Victor took off and took mother and wife to visit the property. The place was indeed charming, a two-story porch house, surrounded by fruit trees and a well-kept garden. Anna toured each room with a thrill on her face. Was it hers? 8 million, Lyudmila whispered to her ear. Victor has already treated everything with the bank. But it's a fortune. Anna arranged, scared. Don't worry, Mother. Let's realize, said Victor. The important thing is that you're happy. And she was. On the way back, she already planned where she would plant strawberries and how she would organize the flowers. A week later, Victor announced that the financing had been approved and had already entered. A few days and the papers were signed. The house was recorded in the name of Alexandra Pavlovna, full name of Victor's mother, but Anna did not care. After all, it was a gift from the son. Congratulations, said Victor, handing him the keys. Now it's yours. Or rather, Grandma Shura corrected Lyudmila in a low voice. Victor just waved his hand. What difference does it make? What matters is my mother's happiness. And Anna, in fact, floated in ecstasy. He had devoted his son his whole life. He has been folded to pay his studies. If he was deprived of everything to see him successful. And there was the reward. But happiness was short-lived. 3 days after the signing of the documents, Victor arrived at home late, with his face closed. Lyudmila, in turn, had her eyes swollen to cry. They spent the night whispering in the kitchen, and in the morning the son released the bomb. Mom, I need to tell you something. Lyudmila and I will separate. I will enter the divorce. Anna froze, the cup shaking in her hands. What do you mean? Why, you have always been so united. It's not so simple. Mother, Victor avoided her gaze. We didn't work out for a long time. We just didn't want to hurt her. Why? Exploded Leonmilla. Tell the truth, Victor, about your Christina, of accounting, about the case you have had for 6 months. He hit the fist on the table. Shut up. My life, my choices. Anna, stunned, mumbled, and the loan? How is the debt of the house? Victor smiled with irony. Rest assured, Leonmilla and I will pay together, as the law sends. Goods acquired in the constancy of marriage are divided and the debts as well. Leonmilla paled. You set it all up. I took this debt on the eve of divorce. How are you going to prove it now? Victor shrugged. So what? It was a gift to my mother. Or are you against? A month later, the case ended up in court. Leonmilla refused to pay half the financing of a property that wasn't even in her name. Victor demanded the division of debt. Half of this loan is yours. You're idiot, he mocked during the audience. It's a marital liability. That is, in my mother's name changes nothing. Anna, sitting in a corner of the room, did not recognize that cold, calculating man. When did he become so cruel? The judge, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, examined the documents carefully. Victor confidently launched provocative glances at his ex-wife. Finally, the magistrate said, I have a question, Mr. Clementive. The Lord insists that the debt must be divided equally between the parties. It's obvious, Victor confirmed. It's a common obligation. Curious, the judge flipped the papers again, then explained to me why. In the purchase and sale contract, the house is evaluated in 3 million rubles, while the loan was 8 million. A heavy silence took over the room. Victor swallowed hard. Ah, that there were extra expenses. Reform, furniture, 5 million in extra expenses. The judge arched an eyebrow. And where are the vouchers? Invoices? Contracts? I present later, he stammered Victor. The judge stared at him for a long moment and then released a laugh. No, Mr. Clementive. Then in 20 years of career I've seen a lot of smart guys, but your case is, say, special. It was not enough to take a loan on the eve of the divorce to throw half of the debt on the wife's back. Still inflated the value 3 times. Allow me to ask, Mr. Clementive, the judge leaned lightly forward, with a sharp smile, where are the other 5 million in your account? Victor's face burned in red spots. Leonmilla arched, turning to the lawyer with a feverish whisper between her teeth. The court determines, the judge continued, without taking his eyes from the defendant, that statements of all estate accounts are requested in the last 3 months, as well as a complete financial expertise. The hearing is suspended until the results are presented. Upon leaving the living room, Anna Georgievna felt the weight of each step as if she carried stones in her shoes. See Vito, the son he was so proud of, the brilliant boy she displayed as a trophy after all. Who was he? A con artist? A handler? The words sounded like knives, and she didn't even know which one hurt the most. It was then that Leonmilla approached her, her eyes swollen with exhaustion, but her firm posture. Can I talk to you? They settled in a coffee in front of the forum, among teacups that they cooled without being touched. I didn't know about his plan. Interest, Leonmilla began, the trembling hands around the spoon. When Victor suggested buying the country house for you, I supported, but my lawyer found that the property is not in his name, but in his mother, and that it cost a fraction of the declared value. She swallowed hard. Victor used you, Anna Georgievna. He used his love for him as a shield for the scam. Anna Georgievna nodded slowly, as if each movement approached her with the truth that was always there, camouflaged. The hurry with the documents, the sick insistence, the gift that smelled the trap, and the rest of the money, he asked, the voice a thread of voice. Leonmilla laughed. Victor, a part went to such Christina to buy an apartment, another for one account abroad. Your lawyer has already tracked. Victor thought he had erased all the tracks, but money always leaves marks. My God, Anna Georgievna took her hand to her chest. When did he become like this? Leonmilla stared at her without mercy. He has always been. You just didn't want to see. Remember when, 3 years ago, he convinced his uncle to sell the apartment and invest in his business? The uncle was in ruin. Or the history of your sister's inheritance. Anna Georgievna closed her eyes. Yes, the signs were there. The business that broke, which never existed. The misunderstanding with the sister's money, which was pure appropriation. She wanted to believe in the excuses, like a mother who confuses love with blindness. What do I do now? His voice broke. Leonmilla held her hand firm. First, departing in court, tell us that the house is not yours, that you didn't even know the real value. Then hesitated. You need to decide if you still want to share life with a man who uses it as a bargaining chip. 2 weeks later, the court was full of irrefutable evidence. Leonmilla's lawyer exhibited extracts showing Victor, with almost all the loan in the same day, with the amounts appearing hours later in the lover's accounts in an offshore bank. Mr. Clementive, The judge has fulminated him with his eyes. You are not being accused of fraud only in the division of goods, but of fiscal evasion. The case will be referred to the competent authorities. Victor no longer smiled. His gray skin shone with drops of sweat. As for the division of heritage, the judge continued, the total burden of the loan falls on the plaintiff, since he was the one who obtained and diverted the funds. And as for the country house, his eyes turned to Anna Georgievna, as the property is registered in the name of Alexander Pavlovna Clementieva, the defendant's mother. There is nothing to divide. When the judge ended, this disdain was so dense that he seemed to hang in the air. In 20 years, Mr. Clementiev, rare were the cases of cynicism as grotesque as yours. Using her own mother as a facade for financial blows, she shook her head. I hope the investigations give you the treatment you deserve. As he left the court, Anna Georgievna felt something strange, lightness, as if, after decades carrying a lead mask, it had finally torn it out. Like she had ignored the shadows in her son's character, justified her cheating, invented excuses, but the curtain had fallen. Anna Georgievna, Ludmilla called her, worried, comes to my house. I don't want you to be alone. Thank you, honey. She smiled for the first time in months. But I have something to solve. Riding home, he took an old treble chest from the closet and began to keep his things. The decision was already made. I would rent the apartment. It would be a stable place and would move to a small but cozy studio, which I had visited the week before. When Victor appeared at night, she welcomed him at the door, the suitcase at his feet. Mom, where are you going? He stammered, his eyes jumping between the chest and his face impassive. I'm leaving, Vidita said serene. I'll rent this place. I've already got something else. But why? Because of this ridiculous process? I explain everything. It's a misunderstanding. Anna Georgievna shook her head. No, son, it is not misunderstanding. And it's my fault, because I closed your eyes for so long. But I won't do that anymore. Where do you go? What will you do? Her voice trembled for the first time without theater. Life, she said, simple. Life without lies. No manipulation. He left the keys on the table. Stay with the house. After all, it's yours. And as for such a country house, his lips bowed into something between sadness and relief. His mother, who decides what to do. It's your problem. Without looking back, she crossed the door. 5 years later, Anna Georgievna's life was unrecognizable. Free from Victor's weight, she was reborn. The rent of the old house played not only a sunny studio, but trips that always postponed Paris, Prague, even a cruise through the Danube. At 72, he enrolled in English classes, dominated the smartphone, and found that social networks could be doors for true friendships. And it was in a shelter for children, where I read stories on the afternoons, who met Nikolai Zainovich, a former member who sculpted wooden toys for the little ones. What started as complicity became something more. Now they shared a 2-bedroom apartment, full of laughs and projects. That house, yes, still rented, but not for Victor. Now she was home to a young couple with a young daughter who filled the crayons and laughs. With the son, there was no reconciliation. After the process, he responded to an inquiry for fraud, escaping with a suspended penalty and fine. Daksha was abandoned. The mother, upon receiving her gift, didn't even thank. Christina left him as soon as the investigations began. At work, he was relegated, then fired. Now she survived her nozzles and called her mother asking for money. Sometimes she helped. Mostly, it just suggested, arrange a decent job, Vidya. But with Ludmilla, yes, the bond flourished. After the divorce, she climbed her career, married a colleague, and 2 years ago, announced the pregnancy. Now, I visited the former report often. Anna Georgievna, what if we had a tea? He said, when Eve arrived with homemade candy boxes. And while the kettle was squeaking, the two laughed, not from the past, but despite it. To divide confidences, celebrate small victories, or just seek advice. One afternoon, as he caressed his rounded belly, Ludmilla confessed slowly, you know, Anna Georgievna, if it weren't for that judicial process, would never have discovered the strength I carry within me. Victor always made me doubt each step, as if I was unable to fly alone. And now, asked Anna, serving the tea with an accomplice smile, now I feel that wings were born on my back. Anna Georgievna understood that feeling like no one else. Sometimes, when she flipped into the cell phone the sunny cliffs of Crimea, where she had passed the previous summer with Nikolai Zainovich, the children's smiles off the orphanage that now visited weekly, selfies with reading club friends, she was surprised by how one decision had written her destination. The decision to open your eyes, to stop justifying the unjustifiable, to fail to nullify by someone who did not even recognize its value. There was no bitterness in his heart, no repentance, only gratitude to the judge, who returned his clarity, Ludmilla, who was by her side on the most turbulence, and even to Victor, whose act of cowardice, ironically, became the push he needed to reinvent himself. At 68, for the first time in his life, Anna Georgievna breathed fullness, not the fragile happiness of yore, made of concessions, but a solid joy, conquered with every choice that brought it to itself. And while the cup of tea cooled between her hands, she knew the best stories are not those that end without scars, but those who, despite them, teaching to fly.